The Mossad. I mean, just the name itself, right? It kind of whispers of shadows, legends, those surgical strikes that are just so precise, they almost defy belief. But, behind all that myth, there's a much more brutal and dangerous reality, a legacy that's really written in blood, bites, and betrayal. So, in this explainer, we're going to peel back the curtain, we're going to go way beyond the legend to dig into the unfiltered files of what is, without a doubt, one of the world's most effective and most feared intelligence agencies.
If you really want to get your head around the Mossad, you have to start right here with this quote from Israel's founding father, David Ben-Gurion. And listen, this wasn't just him being poetic. No way. This was a mission statement. It was forged in the absolute ashes of the Holocaust and the brutal reality of war. That ghost he was talking about, well, that would become the Mossad, an agency specifically designed to go where armies just couldn't.
All right, so here's the plan for how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at how they started, that whole survival doctrine. Then we're going to get into the absolute gold standard of their spies, the legendary Eli Cohen. After that, we dive into their science of lethality. We'll touch on their crazy digital power, their complicated history with allies, and then finish up by looking at the cracks in that supposedly invincible armor. Okay, let's kick things off with their origin story, the genesis, the survival doctrine. This is all about how they forged that dagger in the dark. So, back in December 1949, the Institute, that's what Mossad means, was born. And you've got to understand, this wasn't just another intelligence agency popping up. Not at all. Its core belief, its entire reason for being is absolute. National survival justifies any cost. Think about that. Any cost. And that single idea created this incredibly brutal psyche, shaping the Mossad into two things at the same time. A protective shield for the Israeli people, and an absolutely ruthless, uncompromising dagger aimed at anyone they see as an enemy. Of course, a doctrine like that is just words on paper until you look at the people who actually live it. And that brings us to our second section, the gold standard. The master infiltrator himself, Eli Cohen. Seriously, if you want to understand the raw power of Mossad's human intelligence, their ability to place one person, just one, right into the heart of an enemy state, you have got to understand this guy's story.
Okay, so check this out, because this is where it gets insane. We're talking about the sheer depth of his infiltration. He creates this whole new persona, Kamel Amin Thabit, this wealthy, super charismatic Syrian businessman. And Eli Cohen doesn't just, get close to power, he becomes a pillar of the elite in Damascus. He was so trusted, so deeply embedded, that he was actually on the short list to become Syria's deputy defense minister. Let that sink in. An Israeli spy, one heartbeat away from running his enemy's entire military.
And this next part just perfectly shows his genius. So picture this. He's playing the part of a loyal Syrian patriot, right? He goes to military officials and says, I'm really concerned about our soldiers suffering in the hot sun up on the Golan Heights. His suggestion? It sounded so innocent. Why don't we plant some fast-growing eucalyptus trees to give them some shade? Well, of course, those trees became perfect, can't-miss targeting markers for the Israeli Air Force. And when the Six-Day War broke out, that simple little piece of deception allowed Israel to capture that whole strategic area in just 48 hours. Unbelievable. But this story has a tragic ending. In 1965, the Syrians, using some new Soviet tracking gear, finally caught him. Caught him red-handed, transmitting intel back to Israel. His public hanging in Damascus was, it was a grim, brutal spectacle. But that act cemented his legacy forever. For the Mossad, Eli Cohen became the ultimate symbol of skill, of total dedication, and of the ultimate sacrifice. He's the benchmark that every agent after him has been measured against.
And that idea of sacrifice leads us right into their deadliest function, Section 3, the science of lethality. Their entire philosophy on this can be summed up in one pretty chilling Hebrew proverb. He who comes to kill you, get up early and kill them first. And make no mistake, that isn't just some old saying. It is a core doctrine of preemptive assassination. And the sheer scale is just staggering. Over 2,700? That's the number of assassinations Israel has reportedly carried out since World War II. That's more than any other Western nation. So we're not talking about an occasional act of retaliation here. This is a systematic, core part of their national security strategy. But it's not just about the number, is it? It's the how.
Their methods are this terrifying mix of dark innovation and just absolute ruthlessness. I mean, we're talking about poisoned toothpaste that kills you slowly so it leaves no trace, like they did with Wadi Haddad, exploding cell phones, which is how they got the Hamas bomb maker Yahya Ayash, or, get this, a few years ago, an AI-powered, satellite-controlled machine gun to take out Iran's top nuclear scientist from 1,000 miles away. And then, as we saw in 2024, they weaponized pagers, turning them into tools of mass casualty. The creativity is chilling.
Yeah, let's take a closer look at that 2024 pager attack in Lebanon because it really marks a scary new chapter in warfare. So here's how it went down. First, they infiltrated the supply chain, reportedly using shell companies like BAC Consulting. Then they weaponized these everyday devices by embedding tiny explosives right into the hardware while they were being made. And the final step, a coordinated, synchronized detonation that turned thousands of pagers into thousands of little bombs, all going off at once. This is a whole new level. It's not just targeting a person anymore. It's warfare against an entire system.
Okay, so from the physical world of assassinations, let's pivot to the digital battlefield. Section 4 is all about the digital panopticon. It's the story of how Israel, against all odds, forged itself into a genuine cyber superpower.
I mean, how does a country the size of New Jersey become a global cyber giant? It's a fair question. And the secret? It's in their incredible human capital engine. The whole process starts as early as kindergarten, where they're not just testing kids for high IQ, but also for something they call chutzpah, which is this special mix of audacity, nerve, and thinking outside the box. The top 1%, the absolute best of the best, get funneled into elite military tech units, and the most famous one is Unit 8200. Then, after their service, these same people take their military skills and turn them into multi-billion-dollar tech companies, creating what's known as the startup nation. It's literally a conveyor belt that takes you from the classroom to a military coder to a CEO.
And just look at how dominant this one single unit is. Unit 8200, their offensive cyber arm, provides a jaw-dropping 90% of all intelligence for the entire Israeli defense apparatus. That's insane. It's not just a part of the system, it is the system. It's the very heart of their digital panopticon, the state's all-seeing eye.
But, and this is a huge but, this immense power has a very, very dark side. Because that exact same pipeline, that same engine of talent, also produces tools like Pegasus spyware from the Israeli company NSO Group. This piece of tech, basically a weapon of cyber tyranny, was sold to authoritarian regimes all over the world. And what did they do with it? They used it to hack the phones of dissidents, journalists, even American diplomats. So the very skills that are designed to protect Israel are being exported to help oppress people globally.
And you know, that willingness to cross pretty much any line doesn't just apply to their adversaries. Sometimes that dagger turns on its closest allies. That brings us to Section 5, the betrayal of the West. Listen to this quote from a former CIA officer. It's blunt, and honestly, it's pretty chilling. My encounters with them have been universally negative. They are a critical threat to counterintelligence. Just let that sink in. This isn't an enemy agent talking. This is from America's own intelligence community talking about one of its closest partners. And look, this wasn't a one-off thing. This is a pattern of betrayal stretching back decades. In the 60s, you have uranium for their secret nuclear program allegedly being smuggled right out of a plant in Pennsylvania. In 1967, the attack on the USS Liberty, which killed 34 Americans. And then in the 80s, you've got Jonathan Pollard, who orchestrated one of the most damaging spy cases in U.S. history, stealing, and I quote, suitcases full of American secrets for Israel. So this all leads to a really difficult question, not just for policymakers, but for all of us. When your closest ally is also described by your own spies as a critical threat, who can you actually trust? It just throws a spotlight on the incredibly deep and often very dangerous complexities of this alliance.
But for all of their incredible successes, for all their ruthlessness, that legend of being invincible, well, it's just that, a legend, a myth. And that brings us to our final section, the crack in the armor.
And this really shows you the evolution of their failures. On one side, you've got the Machshal fiasco back in '97. That was a botched assassination attempt in Jordan that turned into a massive public humiliation. They got caught, and Israel was forced to hand over the antidote and even release Hamas's founder just to get their agents back. That was a tactical embarrassment, a huge screw-up. But then you have October 7th, 2023. This was a total catastrophic intelligence breakdown on a national scale. One was a blunder, the other was a strategic catastrophe that completely shattered that image of the Mossad as this all-seeing, all-knowing eye.
So what's the connection? What connects a botched poisoning in the 90s to a massive failure in 2023? The answer, really, exposes the agency's single greatest weakness: its complacency. A deep-seated complacency that's born from decades of incredible success. It's that belief in their own myth, that they're invincible, that has time and time again created massive blind spots with absolutely devastating consequences. And that really brings us to the final verdict here, the bottom line on their legacy. Look, there's no doubt that the Mossad's methods have helped ensure Israel's survival, often in the short term. But the long-term strategic takeaway is pretty profound. Sovereignty achieved through unethical means creates permanent allied friction. And that forces us to ask one last big question. What is the true long-term price for a nation that chooses to live by the dagger in the dark?